It's U of L Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
And welcome to U of L Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. Basketball team's rolling. Football recruiting season is over. We got a good class. You know all about the sports going on at the University of Louisville. Now we're going to tell you about some of the other stuff going on at U of L. So what have we got coming up on today's show? Well, the children of drug-abusing parents. What gives them a better chance to succeed, and what gives their parents the best chance of getting clean and keeping those kids? A U of L researcher will be here to tell us all about that. He's doing some research on that. And he was interviewed by Donald Trump to be Secretary of the Treasury, but says he couldn't work for the new president. He's a libertarian and former head of BB&T Bank. John Allison is his name, and he was recently a guest of the Schnatter Center for Free Enterprise at U of L. I'll have an interesting interview with him about free trade, Trump, and where this country is headed in his opinion. And that'll be coming up at the bottom half of the show. But first, have you ever thought about switching careers and becoming a doctor? The student you're about to hear from not only thought about it, he's doing it. John Whitacre is a medical school student who switched careers through a program at U of L, and the director of that program is Tonia Thomas, and they're both here to talk with us today. Tonia, John, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Good to see you. All
Glad
right.
to be here.
All right, Tonia, tell us a little bit about this career-changing program that's available at the U of L Medical School.
Okay, our program is a 2-year program, and we are definitely seeking students who did not pursue medicine. They have degrees in other areas such as nursing, English, theater arts, and they have minimal science. So we're looking for students with 12 hours or less of pre-med level science. And they apply to our program, and our program provides them with enrichment, extracurricular activities, shadowing, preparation for the medical college admissions test, and a lot of support. That's the big thing. Most of our students are between 22 to 47 years of age, so there's a broad age range, but we provide support for them from the beginning to the end.
And this is for people who started down a career path, like a broadcaster
Yes.
or a helicopter pilot or
Yes.
something like that, and said, you know what, I really want to be a doctor.
Exactly.
And that sounds exactly like what you did, John. So tell us about your background, what you were doing, and how you got to U of L Med School.
Sure. So originally, I graduated from the University of Utah with a degree in business administration. Went from there into the Army, and I was commissioned as a medical service corps officer. So I was dealing with a lot of healthcare-related issues. And in the course of my career, I got deployed to Afghanistan for a year. I went to Liberia with the Ebola epidemic for about 6 months. And it got to the point in my career where I was deciding whether I was going to stay in the military and continue my 20 years or do something else. And through my experience, I decided that what I saw the doctors doing was something I was interested in doing. So I started looking around at the different programs that were offered throughout the United States, and I found a great program here at the U of L, and it had some of the key differences that wanted me to go here rather than some of the other programs.
And you said you worked with some doctors. Obviously, you went to the Ebola outbreak and did some of those kinds of things in the Army. But was there one thing that just hit you one day and you said, you know what, I really want to be a doctor? Was there one thing that put the light bulb on?
There was. So on my first deployment to Afghanistan, I was running an aid station. And we were kind of close to the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. And so we did see a little bit of action. And so one particular instance, one of my friends was hit with an IED. He wasn't, severely injured, but he was kind of rattled. And he came into our aid station, was a little bit confused, didn't know where he was. And so we laid him on the table, and the doctor went to work and started helping him out. And I just watched that interaction and how important it was to have a good physician to take care of the people you care about. Right. And at that point, I think it was really where I decided that being a physician was something I could see myself doing.
How old are you?
I am 34.
So you're 34 years old,
right,
and you're in med school.
I am. Well, not yet. Next August. So this August. So about
okay.
4 months.
Okay, but you're
going to be in med school.
You're going to be in med school. You're 34 years old. And you've got a kid, right?
5 kids.
You got how many?
5 kids.
You got 5 kids, and you're going to go to medical school?
Well, we didn't figure out what the problem was
crazy,
until.
I wouldn't have done it to your face. Wow.
Yes.
You must have some kind of wife, huh? That's all I got to say.
She's
man.
pretty amazing.
She's
pretty amazing.
So, Tonia, what can he expect? I mean, these are long days. These
Yes.
are, hard classes. What do you tell folks like John that come back? They've been out of school for 13, 14 years,
Right.
and they want to go to med school.
It is a huge commitment, time commitment, financial commitment. I would say that the thing that our program provides them, though, is peer mentors. So he had someone who's been in the program a year before he was to help him through that fork in the road moment that a lot of our students have, and having a medical student mentor who is a first-year medical student who can kind of let him know what to anticipate. So it's not totally foreign to them when they actually go. Okay. And we visit the medical school. We have an annual medical school visit. So they get to learn what's coming.
Tonia, and you're the director. Tonia Thomas is the director of this program at UofL. We're also talking with John Whitacre, who's going to be a med school student. What's the name of this program? It's the post-bac something program, right?
Post-baccalaureate pre-medical program.
Okay, that's a mouthful.
Yes, it is.
So if someone is interested, listening out there right now, they're driving down 264 and said, you know what, I've always wanted to be a doctor. What do they need to do?
They need to call me. Can I give the number?
Sure,
okay.
Go ahead.
They need to call 502-852-2879 and ask for me, or they can email me at tonia.thomas@louisville.edu, and I would be glad to talk to them.
What are some of the instances of people or examples of people who have come into this program? Give some kind of careers they were in and what they're doing now.
We have a commercial airline pilot, or former commercial airline pilot, who's now in her third year. We've had several students from the military, which I just find that to be amazing, to leave the military and become a civilian and then pursue medical school and succeed in it, and actually start practicing. We have a student who's an opera singer, or former opera singer, who's in our program right now, and she's about to graduate and start medical school this fall. All different kinds of backgrounds.
And you said one was up to 47 years old, 22 to 47. Is that what you said?
We have some students who started medical school around the age of 45.
Wow. So see, John, you won't be the oldest.
No, not the oldest.
You won't.
Just the
He
most
won't
kids.
be. Right, that's true. He holds
So where
the
are you
record.
right now? So you're not in med school yet. So what are you doing right now?
So right now I'm finishing up the program. I'm taking the required science courses in order to be eligible for medical school. I've completed the MCAT and received my acceptance letter. So basically I'm on the downward path. And once I get these courses complete, then I just start med school. Wait a couple months for med school starts.
And what have you found just taking those classes, which are going to be heavy on science, obviously? What have you found about those classes? Because everybody talks about how hard med school is, and the science classes are the hardest part. What have you found?
Well, I would say that most of success in life is due to your dedication to whatever you happen to be doing. It's not your smartest person. It's not the person that has the most innate talent. It's the person that works the hardest and really commits himself to a particular cause or effort. And so the science courses are just like that. You just got to commit yourself, and if you really are interested in and that's what you want to do, then you're willing to put forth the time and effort to get it done.
Well, you haven't started. Go ahead, Tanya. What were you going to say?
Well, and one thing I definitely wanted to mention that stands out with our program is the assured admissions component. Our medical school has just been wonderful. They reserve spots for students in our program. Now, our students do have to meet a certain criteria in regards to their medical college admissions test score and their grades and the number of hours that they take. But if they meet that criteria, they have a seat that's waiting for them, because medical school is highly competitive. There are approximately 155 seats. So to have those spots reserved for our students, as long as they meet the criteria, is huge.
What do folks like John bring to the table once they become doctors, as opposed to perhaps someone who's 21 years old and goes into med school and graduates when they're, 25, 26, whatever it is? What does the older guy bring to the table as a doctor?
Well, obviously maturity and life experience. And I even say that they've even had a chance to struggle or even fail at something. For many of our students who are younger, they went straight from high school to college to medical school. And life was taking place, but they were kind of isolated to a degree. Whereas with our non-traditional students, as he mentioned, married with children, that will give you some experience with life. So I think that's what our non-traditional students bring: life experience and then job skills. I mean, we have a lot of folks from the business background, and if they open up a private practice, they already have those skills.
John, what are your apprehensions about all this? There's got to be some.
The biggest thing is getting through the first couple of years of med school. Those obviously are, I think, in a lot of ways, the most difficult and most defining as far as your future practice goes and what specialties you'll be able to match with. So I guess what my next focus would be is making sure my grades stay up in med school and that my first match score or test that you take after your second year is high.
And you're not working, I assume, right now. Are you going to school? Are you working right now? But
working part-time with the orthopedic department
Okay.
here at the UofL as a research coordinator.
But then once you get into med school, that you won't be working.
No,
there's no way you're
no.
going to be working. So the wife's carrying the burden, right?
She is. The Army will help out a little bit, obviously, with some of the GI Bill and things, but she's actually a real estate agent right now,
Okay.
and she's doing really well on that. She's got a natural talent for that, so
Okay.
lucky for me.
Okay, yeah, lucky for you. Yeah, you go back to med school. All right, John Whitacre, congratulations. Good luck. You will need it.
Thanks.
And I'm sure you'll do just fine. Tonia Thomas, thanks for being on the show again.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you, I'm sure, sometime in the future. Martin Hall is a professor and researcher in the Kent School of Social Work, and he's done a study looking at opioid-using parents and whether medication works to get them off opioids and in a condition to keep their kids. Welcome, Martin.
Thank you very much.
All right, what do you teach at the Kent School of Social Work?
I teach a couple courses. One social work practice course, basically focusing on intervention approaches for a variety of different problems. And then I teach a substance use course in the spring. That's what I'm teaching now.
So the substance use course, I guess, is what got you interested in this opioids abuse and how to curb that a little bit, right?
Well, probably in the other order.
Oh, the other way around?
I was interested in this for years, and so wanted to teach that when I got here.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about that study that you did, that
Yeah.
you worked on. Tell us a little bit about it. What were you trying to find out, and what did you find out?
Yeah. So maybe if I could just sort of paint kind of the context for this problem. So in Kentucky, at any given time, there's about 100,000 people who report that they have either used or are dependent on an illicit substance. So it's pretty consistent from year to year. But when you actually start to look at specific drugs, you see different issue. And so particularly related to the opioids, we're seeing a lot of problems in this state and in the nation now. And so in 2015, there was about 1,250 people who overdosed and died as a result of opioids.
In Kentucky?
In Kentucky.
I did not realize number was that high.
Yep. And so that makes our average per 100,000 people about 30 people per 100,000. And that may sound low, but that's about twice as many people that would die from car accidents in the same year. And then also, I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that in New York City, the average death rate per 100,000 people is about 12 people. So in Kentucky, we're about 3 times higher than the rate in New York City, and we have specific counties that are in the 50s or 60s per 100,000 people.
Are most of those in eastern Kentucky?
Most are, yeah.
Okay. All right. So you've laid the foundation for that.
Yeah.
We've got an opioid, drug addiction, drug death problem in the state of Kentucky.
We've got an epidemic, and particularly with regard to child welfare, what we've seen is that families who come into child welfare because of opioid problems tend to have poorer outcomes than families who come in even with other drug problems. So if you come in with an alcohol or even a cocaine problem, people with opioid problems tend to have poor outcomes, less likely to get their kids back than people with other kinds of drug problems. And in spite of this, there are very little research in terms of looking at specific programs for families who have opioid problems. So we were basically interested in seeing, of the families that we work with in the program that I work with, which is called Sobriety Treatment and Recovery Teams, is there a difference based on whether families got medication-assisted treatment compared to families who had opioid problems and did not get it? So was there a difference in their outcomes?
And what'd you find?
We found that there was a difference. So of the families who got medication-assisted treatment at least a month, about 71% of those families kept their kids at the end of their case. So basically when Child Welfare Services says, okay, you know, we think this case is resolved, almost 3/4 of those families had their kids. Of the opioid-using families who got no medication-assisted treatment, only about half those families retained their kids.
We're talking with Martin Hall, who's a professor at the Kent School of Social Work at the University of Louisville, and we're talking about opioid addiction and how parents are impacting their kids and what could be used to keep those families together. When you said that they are on a program and they're getting some assistance, what are we talking about? What kind of, well, they're not drugs. Well, I guess they are drugs, the treatment.
Yeah,
what are they getting? as opposed to the opioid using parents who
Yeah.
aren't getting anything.
Okay, so in the sobriety treatment and recovery program, it's sort of a specialized program for families that come into child welfare because of drug and alcohol problems. So the actual child welfare worker gets some specialized training. And then one other special part is that each child welfare worker is paired with a recovery mentor. So this is somebody who has a history of drug or alcohol problems and is in sustained recovery.
They've been there.
They've been there, and many of them actually have had child welfare involvement too before. So these two, the child welfare worker and the peer mentor, share a caseload, and that really helps families get into treatment in a way that families probably in typical child welfare don't, because the mentor is actually going to this individual's house and saying, hey, I'll take you to treatment today, or I'll take you to your first AA or NA meeting. So it's involved at an intensive level that you wouldn't commonly see. And then, we offer we try and encourage people to consider medication-assisted treatment. It's not for everybody, and you've got a couple different drug categories, and that's mostly available for people who have opioid problems.
Right.
So,
But the parents who are doing that went through this program, 3/4 of them kept their kids or got their kids back out of foster care, presumably, or out of the system, right?
that's right. So the parents, and that's a good point. So some of these parents may have had to give up their kids for a little while they were involved in this program. But once they established a period of sobriety, they were able to get their kids back at almost 20% more common than families who got no medication.
As someone who is not addicted to drugs, you would think that having your kids taken away would be enough incentive to quit. But it's not that easy, is it? From a social worker's perspective, it's not that easy.
It's not that easy. A lot of people don't understand that chronic substance use actually causes brain changes. And so we can actually see this through brain scans of individuals who have never used drugs to those who have, that they're, even months after an individual stopped using drugs, you can still observe brain changes, and often in the areas of the brain which are responsible for decision making and impulse control. So people remain vulnerable for a long period of time. And part of what the medication does is help stave off the cravings until you can actually see some natural rewards for a period of sobriety. And so one way to think about this is, so I know I've actually seen you at the gym occasionally, so you're an exerciser. So when a lot of people start an exercise program, you don't see any impacts right away, right? It takes a while before you actually see the benefits of exercise probably. So in the context of people trying to get off drugs and alcohol, you really need a bridge before you can start to experience a lot of the good things that a life of sobriety will give you. So the medication really helps stave off that early intense craving until you get to a point where you can enjoy being around other people and your kids and the things that most of us find enjoyable.
Again, we're talking with Martin Hall from the Kent School of Social Work at UofL. You said earlier that the parents who are abusing opioids are different and perhaps in a worse position than parents who are doing cocaine or some other drugs. Why is that?
Opioids affect the brain in a different way than some of the other drugs. So their addictive capacity is a little higher than you'd see for other drugs. There's also, I think, a challenging issue in that many people who end up on heroin now began with prescription opioids. So people who have chronic pain, so let's imagine somebody's in short-term recovery and they're in a car accident. Well, one of the most common treatments that you get for that is a painkiller, which can be very difficult for people in early recovery. So opioids are sort of out there, not just heroin, but the prescription opioids in a way that you wouldn't maybe find with other kinds of drugs. So the fact that they're illegal makes it a little trickier for a lot of people.
And also, as you're dealing with these parents that are addicted to drugs, what are those children going through? Again, from social work standpoint, what are those children going through in that home? What aren't they getting that a kid growing up in a normal house would get?
Well, what often happens for people who sort of lose their life to addiction for a period of time is the addiction really takes over. And so most of the kids who are involved in child welfare and who have families who have drug and alcohol problems, it's less often abuse than it is neglect. So parents basically find themselves, once they reach a certain point, that they're really not able to prioritize the most important things in their life, that really the addiction takes over. So most families who enter child welfare, it's because of parental neglect. So maybe, somebody left their kids alone so they could go out and try and score some drugs, and somebody called a report in and said, oh, there's a family next door to me and they have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old alone in the apartment. So would be not an uncommon experience for people who have an active addiction.
Okay, Martin Hall from Kent School of Social Work. Thanks for being on the program. Appreciate it. The relatively new John H. Schnatter Center for Free Enterprise at UofL's College of Business has been inviting speakers to campus to talk about business, economics, and world affairs for the past several months. The most recent speaker was John Allison. He's the former CEO of BB&T Bank, and he's now at the College of Business at Wake Forest University. And here is my interview with John Allison. We're here with John Allison, who is a guest of the Schnatter Center for Free Enterprise at the University of Louisville School of Business. John, you're at the Wake Forest right now. You're in the something in residence, right?
I'm an executive in residence.
Executive in residence. You got that big title, right?
That's right.
And you're the former CEO of BB&T.
Correct.
Worked at the Cato Institute for a while.
CEO of Cato too.
All right. What else have you done in your life?
That's about it.
That's it? That's all?
Yeah, I've got a few children and those kind of things.
Okay, but in terms of the work world, that's
Yeah,
where
right.
you are.
I was at BB&T for 38 years.
Okay. And you're here as a guest of the Schnatter Center. You're going to be talking to a group here in a few minutes. What are you going to tell them? What's the topic of your speech? What are you going to talk to them
The
about?
title of my speech is "The Philosophic Fight for the Future of America."
Jeez, that sounds like something for Fox News or MSNBC, man. It sounds kind of confrontational.
Well, it's about the conflict of ideas between the classical liberal tradition of the Founding Fathers and the progressive school, which we hear a lot about. And the idea that what made America great was really liberty. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, each individual's moral right to their own life, which implied limited government, limited interference in our lives. And over time, we've moved in a different direction where it's become a belief of a lot of people, highly educated people, that government has the answers to all of our problems, and that smart people in Washington, D.C. know what's better for us. And they're quite willing to use the power or force of government to institute their policies, always theoretically in the name of the common good, but a lot of times it doesn't seem like it's good for us.
So I guess it's fair to say you're an economic conservative. That'd be fair to say. Since you work for the Cato Institute, I guess we could presume that.
Yeah, Cato's really a libertarian organization. What we say is the government ought to stay out of your pocket, but we also say it ought to stay out of your bedroom. So we believe really in individual rights and a very limited role of government, which is about protecting you from me, keeping me from using force or fraud to take what you've earned, and keeping you from using force or fraud to take what I've earned.
Well, what's your take on the Trump administration? We heard all sorts of stuff during the campaign, and some of it, I think most of us that consider ourselves middle of the road independents would consider a lot of the things that Donald Trump said about the economy and economic freedom to be conservative, but there were some other things that you would say, no, that's not a conservative view. So what's your take, kind of as an economist, for lack of a better term, on President Trump?
Well, I actually met with President Trump. I was a candidate for the Secretary of Treasury, and it was an interesting experience.
Okay.
He's a very charismatic person in person.
We know that.
And as an individual. From my perspective, he said some really good things, and he said some things that I strongly disagree with.
Okay.
He is, I believe, going to work hard to cut taxes, lower, flatter taxes. I think that's good. He's going to work hard to reduce regulation. I think he's very serious about repealing and replace Obamacare, doing something about Dodd-Frank, which is a massive regulation of banks, rolling back the EPA, which has hurt states like Kentucky. All of that I consider good. I think he will nominate Supreme Court justices that those of us that are libertarian conservative will be happy with, and I think that's very, very important. On the other hand, for those of us that believe in free markets, I think he's really negative on free trade. I think free trade has actually been good for our country. He's very negative on immigration, and I think that's a mistake. I think we need rules, but immigration this country's built by immigrants. And he's also quite willing to run massive government deficits, which is certainly not a conservative position. I mean, his whole idea, and there's some truth in this, but it's not, I don't think the whole solution is faster growth, and that faster growth will cure all our problems. But faster growth's good, but it won't cure all of our economic issues.
We're talking with John Allison, who's the executive in residence at Wake Forest University and has held other jobs at BB&T and the Cato Institute. And I had forgotten that you were interviewed by President Trump. I should have looked that up. When you went into that conversation, were you just glad to be there, or were you saying, you know what, I think I might really like this job, or did you have some reservations about President Trump walking in?
I had some reservations. I'm a libertarian, so I voted for Gary Johnson. I do know Vice President Mike Pence, and I have a very high regard for him. I think he's a very fine person on every aspect, and he's the one that asked me to meet with as President-elect Trump. I found the process interesting, but as I said, there were some pretty important areas where we're pretty much in disagreement, so that's an interesting conversation.
Well, President Trump has already essentially torn up one trade agreement, and he's got his eyeballs on some others. What, from your perspective, is the downside of us backing out of some of these trade agreements around the world?
Well, free trade has improved the standard of living for people in the United States and throughout the world. You know, we think of the United States of more income disparity, greater, but what's happening in the rest of the world is people are rising. In fact, billions of people have been raised out of poverty, and free trade and freer markets have been major reasons for doing that, and that improves the quality of our life. Now, the problem with trade agreements, they aren't really free trade agreements, right? Free trade is like North Carolina or Kentucky trade with each other, right? We don't have an agreement, we just trade.
Right.
And I think there's some truth in what President-elect Trump is saying, that some of these agreements are not good from the United States perspective. So
I think everyone would agree that some of them are bad deals.
They're bad deals.
But,
and I think,
how do you pick and choose?
I think it's very difficult.
Yeah.
And you can't win every negotiation. So could we have done a better job, and should we have done a better job in negotiating? Yeah, but I think if that ends up ending or hurting free trade, it'll be bad for all of us.
You also mentioned the Dodd-Frank and rolling back. You would be in favor of rolling back some of the regulations put in place by Dodd-Frank. I think other folks would say that there haven't been enough regulations and a government crackdown on big banks since the collapse, 6-7 years ago. How do you defend the idea that there need to be fewer regulations on banks and financial institutions?
Well, the irony of Dodd-Frank is that the big banks are actually for it now, because they've achieved what's called regulatory capture. And who's being killed is the community banks.
The little ones.
We've had very few banks started since Dodd-Frank, and the number of banks has been in a dramatic free fall because the regulatory cost has actually hurt the smaller banks much more than the big banks. I actually testified before Congress for a bill called the Choice Act, which would allow banks to opt out if they had very strong capital positions. But guess who was opposed to that? The large banks, because they've gotten regulatory capture.
They're already there,
and they don't want competition.
Right.
So Dodd-Frank is classic of legislation made in the heat of the battle. It's actually hurt the people it wasn't supposed to hurt, and the people that didn't cause the financial crisis, and helped the people that did, which is sad.
Thanks for listening to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. You can find this program every Monday and Tuesday night at 6 o'clock, right after Ramsey and Rutherford. You can also see some of these programs on KETKY statewide and on Metro TV here in the city of Louisville. Also, every Monday morning around 9:30 or so, I'm on Great Day Live on WHAS TV with Terry Miners and Rachel Platt, and I always have some new story, some new video about something going on at the University of Louisville. So once again, thanks for listening to UofL Today with Mark Hebert, and go Cards.